So we have reached the point, at least at my house, in my neighborhood, the point in the year where it is darn near impossible to get cold water out of the faucet.
Yes.
Oh, that's a bummer. You've got a long way to go.
I can't. Here's what really bothers me.
Oh, here we go.
About this particular subject. At night when you're going to wash your face and you want to get hot water, you turn on the hot water and it comes out really hot at first and then it goes like super lukewarm and it takes a minute to get the hot. And I'm like, how could it possibly be taking this long to get that hot?
I just prefer cold water splashed on my face at all times.
Well, you live in Arizona, buddy.
Yeah, no. It just doesn't happen. You don't have that problem, Dani? You have cold water all the time?
Knock on wood twice.
Okay.
So far, so good.
She's part of the glitterati. She lives in this epic apartment complex that
news
is
to me.
above.
Wow. So she did get that pay raise. Okay.
Who started that rumor?
Cold water aside.
Yes.
As we now enter into the off season, our most recent...
The off season.
Yes, where there is absolutely no one in the building.
Except us.
Except for those of us who work, because we have no days off. I thought this would be a little fun exercise for the Arizona Cardinals in 2026. Come up with a position group minus the quarterback, if that's okay with everyone. Can we say that?
You're in charge, Craig.
Okay.
I follow your lead at all times.
Can we get that clipped, please? Because everyone's going to pick quarterback if you rank your position groups that are most necessary. So let's just forget about the quarterback position. But what position group is crucial for the Cardinals to be successful in 2026?
Dani, you can go right ahead here.
Okay. This is, for better or worse, it was kind of tough because you could easily make an argument for pretty much every position.
That is fair.
Coming off the 2025 season. I went with running back. So in 2025, last season, it was a room that was riddled with injuries. They were down to their 6 and 7 string backs by the end of the season. They were bottom of the league in rushing yards, and so they'd invested in that this offseason. Their new head coach is an offensive-minded head coach who has been places where they've run the ball really well. They brought in left guard Isaac Seumalo in free agency, right tackle Elijah Wilkinson in free agency. They drafted right guard Chase Pasantis pretty high in the draft. And then you get into the running backs room specifically. You restructure James Conner's deal to keep him here. You bring in Tyler Algier, who has been very good as that supplemental number 2 piece in Atlanta with Bijan Robinson, and before Robinson's arrival, surpassed 1,000 yards rushing as a rookie with the Falcons. And then, of course, you draft Jeremiah Love with the 3rd overall pick in the draft. They have put resources into running the ball. So it is crucial that the backs, along with that offensive line that they have strengthened to run the ball a little bit better, performs. And we know that when you run the ball, you control the line of scrimmage, you control the game, the pace of play, you control the clock, all of those things, and it opens up the passing game. And then as you start to, look beyond the branches, okay, if you have options, regardless of who is at quarterback, their life is a little bit easier if you can run the ball. So it's always important to run the ball well, but given the resources, the capital, the money that they have put into running this ball well, they need to go out and they need to perform. So I went with running back as being crucial for this team.
Can I add to that argument? Stability at running back. I believe it was 4 different running backs started at least a game. 6 different running backs played at least a game. And no team had fewer rushing attempts than the Cardinals in 2025 because of the turnover and the inability of the offense to be efficient, and you're throwing the ball 40-plus times, and that's just not a recipe for success. So, yeah, I would buy that 100%.
And I, that could be seen as maybe the easy way out. You always need to run the ball well, but just specifically with where they have really put a lot of focus this offseason, you need to go out and you need to make that worth it.
My question when it comes to running back is in part like, what is the health of this room going to look like, and how could that shape the room? I mean, let's face it, by midseason last year, the running back room looked completely different than we were expecting it to. And I know a lot of people are like, the Cardinals have all these running backs, so they're going to trade one, which is not an unfair question. But again, like, we saw how quickly you can tear up a running back room, and even Mike LaFleur made a kind of a reference to that at one point. So, I have no doubt, obviously, Jeremiah Love is going to be RB1. But where does everybody else, get into the mix? Do they get in the mix? Is this the year where you keep all the running backs and then it turns out they stay healthy the whole time and then you just have these guys sitting around? When I think about running back, I 100% agree with you, especially from the concepts that I think Mike LaFleur wants to get at in terms of offensively, and the fact you put in all this draft capital with your first pick. But how it all plays out is really fascinating. I mean, the three of us, it's not just the three of us, it's everybody. I don't know anybody in our department who doesn't love James Conner and want to see him succeed. He's still coming off that injury. Mike LaFleur did say, hey, we expect all these guys to be back by camp. What does that mean? Where does Conner fit in with Algier and Love? All these things. I think it's going to be one of the more interesting kind of storylines to come into camp. But back to your point, definitely crucial.
Interesting and different than a lot of other storylines with competition, because a lot of other position rooms, when you're looking at maybe right guard specifically in that O-line room, cornerbacks, defensive line, right? There's competition of who's going to be your starter, who's going to play a lot of that, get a lot of those reps in some of those rotational pieces. Not necessarily the case in running back. It's more, how are they going to divvy up the supplemental reps as a running back? And Love might not be ready to be that true leading back week one. This might be a bit of a slow burn in the sense of, it is maybe a true 1-2 punch with Algier or Conner if he's healthy. And then over time you start to rely on Love on third and fourth down and a little bit more as he gets more comfortable. And Trey Benson, I didn't even mention him, right? What does he look like going into year 3 coming off of his injuries? I would expect that this room keeps a good amount of backs just from getting burned to no fault of their own of the injuries last year. But it's an exciting room because of the talent that they have and the possibilities there are.
And to your point, it's different also to me. I understand Love has not played in the NFL. I think it's a fair assumption to think he is going to be a successful player on this level. Everybody across the league believes that. So if you kind of count that as like a given, which it isn't, but you're pretty close. All the other positions we're talking about guys who have to prove themselves the first time, whereas James Conner is proven in this league and Tyler Algier is proven in this league. That's what makes it intriguing. It's a good problem to have rather than I'm not sure what the heck we're going to get here.
All the more reason that this is a position room that absolutely is crucial to perform for the betterment of this entire team because you have players that are proven.
I feel like she kind of said that to kind of say, look, I made the best point.
Well, so far I have made the best point.
Dani always makes the best point. Have you not learned that
Thank
yet?
you. Let's hear what you have to say, Darren.
Okay. I am going to go with cornerback, and it's kind of the reverse of the running back room, which is you got all these guys, these young guys, these draft picks that they've spent all this draft capital on, all these guys, or a waiver claim in the case of Starling Thomas. And how does that turn out? I mean, we were talking previously about like Garrett Williams and when he's healthy and he's above Sean Murphy Bunting and the slot and everything. Will Johnson's going to be one of your starting cornerbacks. I don't think there's any question. And he showed a lot last year and he was mostly healthy. You want to see him get a couple of interceptions. But I think what you saw of him bodes well for what his future can be. What happens at the other side is Denzel Burke get a lock on that one after starting a good chunk of last year? Does he battle in the competition with Max Melton? Where's Starling Thomas going to be coming off that injury? Does Garrett Williams, if you recall, when we went into training camp last year, one of the big storylines was we've got to get Garrett Williams on the field a lot more than just in slot, so we're going to play him outside more. So does Garrett Williams get to play that other outside when they're only playing two cornerbacks? But again, as the opposite of what Dani was talking about with the running backs, a lot of these guys have to prove they can do it on a consistent level still. I think Garrett Williams has shown that mostly. Max Melton hasn't. I think Will Johnson still has steps to take. I think Burke flashed absolutely, but there's still some moments. And of course, this loops in with pass rush. But to me, that's kind of where cornerback is right now.
Add in Elijah Jones as well. Just how well he performed in the brief appearance that he did have in 2025. Another high draft pick on day 2. There's a lot of draft capital invested in that room, maybe more so than any other position group. But to your point, Darren, what is known about that room? And then with the slot corner position, is that a separate conversation? Because if you're picking your best cornerbacks, yeah, Garrett Williams is in that mix. But is that just as a slot? Or do you consider him as an outside guy, and then that maybe whittles down the competition or how many corners you ultimately keep?
I would just say Garrett Williams is one of your best cornerbacks, period. Inside or outside, he is one of the best cornerbacks. If this coaching staff decided to leave him outside, I don't think it would be a question that he would be the starting outside cornerback opposite of Will Johnson. And if he's fully healthy, there's no question in my mind he's the starting slot corner. Like, he's just one of your best cornerbacks overall. I'm not sure that it necessarily affects the competition levels inside versus outside, and we've talked about this on a recent episode of you will likely keep Sean Murphy-Bunting as your slot corner behind Williams once he's healthy to come back. And I don't think wherever Williams plays would necessarily impact the amount of corners they're keeping outside.
Do you guys think there is a scenario where they decide in nickel situations their best lineup has both Murphy-Bunting and Garrett Williams on the field?
I do think that's an option. I think now you're branching out to the safety room. You lost Jalen Thompson, and what does Rabbit look like? What does Andrew Ringer look like, who you brought in free agency? So if you're wanting your best 11, I do think that's possible to have those two out there.
In that scenario, then you are telling me anyway that Garrett Williams is, if not your number one corner, number 2. And who
it would be behind Will Johnson in your head,
so you'd have
case,
Will Johnson, Garrett Williams, and Sean Murphy-Bunting as your 3 cornerbacks. That's how I would look at that as far as the pecking order, because you want your best 11, if that's what you deem as your best 11, because you want, it doesn't matter how it looks, because I do think you're going to see more nickel packages. Teams this day and age will play with more than 4 DBs most of the time. It's typically with 5 because you're spreading the ball and throwing the ball a ton. Then how much of that do you see maybe a Sean Murphy-Bunting or Garrett Williams or Budda Baker creep closer to the box, which is another wrinkle in how corners have been used, or at least the defensive backs have typically been used under Nick Rawlis.
When it comes to cornerbacks, when we have this discussion, and if let's say SMB is one of the and this is nothing to do with SMB really, are you disappointed if with as many guys as you've drafted and as high as you've drafted them, that your top 3 cornerbacks wouldn't be draft picks at this point? And you know what? I know he wasn't drafted, but because they picked him up on the waiver wire, I'm going to count Starling as one of those guys. So it could be Starling Thomas.
Wait, you're saying their top 3 cornerbacks were not draft picks, but Garrett Williams and Will Johnson were.
Right, but SMB wouldn't. Like, you have all these other draft picks,
of your
and you're
top
still
3, they're not all 3 draft
picks.
No, you brought him in for a reason.
Yeah.
And one of those players in Starling Thomas is coming off injury. Now, do you need to see more from Max Melton? Yes. Is there still more to see and answers to learn about Denzel Burke? Yes. But SMB's been in the league so long that's not a concern to me if that's the case.
There'd be disappointment, I would think, within the front office and scouting department. You invested a high draft pick in a player that did not meet expectations, but at the same time, you brought in other players that were better than them, and it's about putting your best 11 no matter who they are, drafted, undrafted, free agent, off the street, who's going to help us win games. So it's kind of, to use your word that you like to use a lot, nuanced. It's a little bit of both.
It's nuance in specific players as opposed to an umbrella, because you've seen really good things from Burke and from Melton. You need it more consistently. They need to be healthy. It's a different conversation of someone like Elijah Jones.
Yeah.
Keitrell Clark has looked good in the reps he's had, but there's been inconsistency there. So it depends on the specific player for my answer for that question.
And I also, as I wrap up, the last thing I want to say about the corners here is that we have the same general manager, but you have a new coach. And inevitably, when we get to the final cuts with a new coach, there's always a few guys that are like, oh, okay, he's not here anymore. And it's just because he doesn't fit in with whatever they wanted to do. And I'm not saying that could be cornerback specific, but it could be.
It might not be as drastic, though, having the same defensive coordinator.
Possibly.
For my position group, this would help the cornerback position. I went with defensive line and specifically singling out two players in Walter Nolan and Darius Robinson. If this defensive line can even be somewhat better stopping the run, a year ago, ranked in the bottom third among a handful of teams that allowed the most 10-plus and 20-plus runs last season. They don't need to be a top 10 rushing defense, but can you be middle of the pack, if you will, to where you're helping out everyone else on the second and third levels because you're forcing offenses to look at second and long, third and long, as opposed to third and short, and the entire playbook is open, and as a defense, you have to be ready for everything. Too few times last season, this Cardinals team was not able to rush the quarterback. Bring an extra defender, bring some heat, because it was 3rd and 4 or less. And that's why the sack totals and the pressure numbers were not nearly as good. I think if this defensive line can, again, not a lot of tackles for loss, but just make it more difficult for offenses, especially in the run game, I think that just helps the entire defense, and it begins, as everyone likes to say, at the line of scrimmage.
No question about it. I'd love to look deeper in the numbers of those rushing numbers in garbage time. I mean, you know, this defense, it almost fell apart in the second half pretty consistently throughout the year. Really, in the fourth quarter was a huge drop-off. So if these teams are creating a pretty large lead, offenses are going to run the ball. You're right, though, is it was not consistent in stopping the run. It was not consistent in getting to the quarterback, having any sort of pressure to force these offenses to be on their toes and make quick decisions. And you look at the opponents in general that the Cardinals are facing this year, but look at the backs in the NFC West. Those are some of the best. That is tough competition, and they have to be better in the trenches at giving themselves a shot to win games and not being run all over, specifically by the Rams, the Niners, and the Seahawks.
I think I feel like I saw enough from Walter Nolan when he was on the field to feel pretty good that if he's healthy, you're fine there. But he's got to stay healthy. The Darius Robinson, like, I love Darius. I think he's a great guy. I think he's a really good, hard worker. I think he wants to be good. He hasn't gotten to that level yet. You gotta see some impact from him. You just do, and I think he understands that as we get to this point in his career. And the defensive line as a whole, I'm interested to see how they bring back Roy Lopez. I think that was a nice move. I'll be interested to see if Billings. I'm assuming he'll be on the roster. The man is a mountain.
It's hard to miss.
And you know, if you're putting him in run-only situations, he's a nice block of granite right in the middle that's going to be tough to move around. So that's going to be fascinating. You know, losing Caleb Proctor, that's disappointing. You would have liked to see what he might have brought to the table. But they've got some veterans. They got Collier. You know,
Dante Stills.
I mean, I feel like this defensive line can definitely be better than they showed last year. I think they have that kind of, and they didn't, you know, Proctor was the one true upgrade they tried to make, and now he's not around. So they brought back Roy Lopez, and I think that will help. But still, it's like you need to play better.
Well, they also lost statistically their best player on defensive line last year in Calais Campbell, who went back to Baltimore as a free agent. So that's where you're looking at the roster and okay, there's a lot of players who have shown good things, but they absolutely need to be better because, again, statistically, they lost their best player on the defensive line last year.
The Proctor injury, yes, it's disappointing, but I think it only hurts the depth. To our conversation earlier about the cornerback position, no one knows anything about Caleb Proctor.
That's true. You're right.
How well he can be in this. He might be lights out, or he might be why he was selected in the 4th round. So I wouldn't put too much on his plate. I'm looking at the veterans that they retained, the veterans that they brought, and the guys already in that room that, okay, can you be better? There's nothing more demoralizing, even as a fan watching, when you know exactly what is coming and you still can't stop it.
Fair.
And that happened way too many times. The same play over and over, and it was one guy missing an assignment, not getting off a block, or just not being good enough, physical or technique-wise. So I put a lot on the defensive line, at least for me defensively, when it comes to this Cardinals team in 2026.
All good answers.
All good answers.
And
Good job.
to your point earlier, Dani, you could pick any position group.
I thought you were going to say the point earlier where I had the best point, but that is also true. You can really argue any position.
You did that, but at
And
this
we did
point,
argue
it's
many
foregone
positions.
conclusion.
And we did, and we specifically ruled out
Yes.
quarterback, and obviously a lot is going to go into that. But we could have a whole podcast just on quarterback, which is basically Cardinals Underground most weeks. So,
I think we did a good job of not making sure that we poured cold water on this edition of Cardinals Underground.
that was really funny until you messed it up.
Yeah, we'll have to work on that. Edit that out, Cody.